New York, Friday evening, April 14th, 2025. The studio of The Tonight Show at 30 Rockefeller Plaza buzzes with the energy of a live broadcast. Mostly people over 50 sit in the audience, adjusting their glasses, whispering about politics and the latest news. The spotlights dazzle. The band The Roots plays a jazzy riff, and Jimmy Fallon, smiling and relaxed, steps onto the stage, greeting the crowd. Welcome to the show. His voice is warm, but his usual ease feels slightly strained. Tonight, we have a legend, Al Pacino. The audience erupts in applause. Al Pacino, in a dark suit with an unbuttoned shirt, emerges from the shadows of the wings. His walk is confident, but his eyes are sharp, as if he's planning something. The crowd senses it. This isn't just a promo for a new movie. Jimmy cracks jokes about the weather and elections, trying to lighten the mood, but Pacino sits down, crosses his arms, and stares straight into the camera. "Jimmy, can I say something?" His voice is low, almost menacing. Fallon nods, smiling. "Of course, Al, the stage is yours." Pacino leans back in his chair. "I respect your work, but there's something that's been bothering me. And not just me. These late-night shows. You all avoid real conversations. Following Kimmel's lead, aren't you? Jokes about politics, but not a word about what really matters to people: taxes, healthcare, the way we're being divided into camps." The audience falls silent. Jimmy blinks, his smile fading. "Al, we're here for entertainment." "Entertainment?" Pacino raises his voice. "People are tired of empty jokes. They want the truth. Have you seen how Kimmel mocked retirees for complaining about inflation? That's not funny, Jimmy. It's humiliating." The crowd murmurs. Some nod, others look uneasy. Backstage, a producer in headphones clutches their head, whispering, "Cut him off." But Jimmy raises a hand, halting the panic. "Okay, Al, let's talk," he says, a steely edge creeping into his voice. "You think I don't want to talk about serious stuff? You know how this works." The audience wants laughs, not lectures. Pacino snorts. The audience, he turns to the crowd. "Do you want to be fed jokes about dogs and TikTok, or do you want someone to finally tell it like it is?" The audience explodes in applause. A woman in the third row, wearing a sweater with an American flag, shouts, "Tell him, Al." Jimmy looks flustered, but doesn't back down. "You're accusing me of playing by the rules." His voice hardens. "Maybe you've forgotten what it's like to be in my shoes. You're a star. Al, you can say anything. I have to keep this show afloat." Pacino leans forward. "I'm not a star. I'm one of them." He nods toward the audience. "And I'm tired of you TV folks deciding what we need to hear." The atmosphere grows tense. The audience holds his breath, cameras capturing every move. Jimmy opens his mouth to respond, but Pacino raises a hand. "Let me finish," he says calmly, but with a force that silences everyone. "I don't want to fight. I want us to start talking. Real conversations. About why people like these," he nods toward the crowd again, "feel abandoned." Jimmy looks at him, and something new flickers in his eyes, not anger, but a challenge. "All right, all you want the truth? Let's try it. But are you ready to hear my side?" The audience buzzes. Tension hangs in the air like a storm about to break. What will Pacino say? And how will Jimmy regain control of the show? The studio of The Tonight Show pulses with tension. The spotlights seem hotter than usual, and the hum of the air conditioners drowns in the murmur of the audience. Al Pacino, his dark eyes blazing, sits leaning forward, as if ready to leap into battle, not a physical one, but one where words cut sharper than knives. Jimmy Fallon, despite a faint smile, looks like a man who's just stepped onto a minefield. The audience is a mix of anticipation and unease. Older folks, who came for jokes and light stories, now sit on the edges of their seats, sensing they're witnessing something historic. "Your side?" Al repeats, his voice low but piercing, like a violin before the crescendo. "Jimmy, I'm not against you. But you're part of a system that silences people. You know what I mean." Jimmy sighs, his fingers drumming on the desk, a subtle gesture that betrays his nervousness. "Al, I'm not against serious topics. But there's a time and place. We're here to give people a break, not a lecture on how bad things are." "A break?" Pacino raises an eyebrow, and a spark of irony flashes in his gaze. "You call it a break when Kimmel mocks people who can barely make ends meet? When your political jokes sound like you're scared to say anything real?" The audience buzzes with approving murmurs. A man in the back rows, with gray hair and a velvet jacket, shouts, "That's right, Al. Give it to him." A woman next to him nods, clutching her purse as if holding onto an anchor. They're not just spectators, they feel heard. Jimmy raises his hands as if surrendering, but his eyes tell a different story. Okay, let's be real. You think I don't want to talk about taxes or healthcare? But if I start, half the audience will walk out. Or worse, we'll get accused of being too left or too right. You know this, Al, you've been in this game longer than me. Pacino smiles, thinly, almost predatorily. Maybe I have, but I've never been afraid to speak my mind. Remember the 70s? People took to the streets because they believed their voices mattered. And now, everyone's sitting in front of TVs, listening to you, the stars of the airwaves, decide what they should think. The audience erupts in applause. Cameras catch their faces, wrinkles that tell stories of decades of struggle, eyes shining with anger and hope. Backstage, a producer whispers into a headset, "Don't cut it. This is viral." But Jimmy doesn't hear it. He looks at Pacino, his gaze a mix of irritation and respect. "You want to challenge the system?" Jimmy asks, his voice growing firmer. "Fine, let's play. But tell me, Al, what do you suggest? You came here to criticize Kimmel, me, the whole industry. But what do you want me to do right now?" Pacino leans back in his chair, his fingers brushing his chin. The audience falls silent, waiting. Even the Roots stop playing, and a hush settles over the studio, broken only by the faint hum of equipment. He looks at Jimmy, then at the crowd, and finally speaks. "I want you to bring an ordinary person up here. Not a star, not a politician. Someone from this audience. Give them a mic. Let them say what's on their mind. And don't interrupt, don't joke, don't turn it into a laugh. Just listen." Jimmy blinks, clearly not expecting this turn. "You're serious as ever," Pacino replies, his voice carrying a weight that feels like a challenge not just to Fallon, but to the entire world. The audience freezes. The woman in the third row, the one who shouted earlier, clasps her hands, her eyes burning. The man in the velvet jacket whispers to his neighbor, "Now that's a twist." Jimmy scans the crowd as if searching for an escape, but sees only dozens of eyes watching him expectantly. "All right," he says at last, his voice a mix of hesitation and resolve, "but I choose who." He stands holding the mic and slowly walks into the audience. Cameras follow him, spotlights highlighting the faces of the crowd. The tension builds, and it feels like the air in the studio has thickened. "You." Jimmy stops by the woman in the flag sweater. "What's your name?" She stands, her hands trembling, but her voice steady. "Elaine." "Elaine Thompson." "Elaine," Jimmy says softly, but with a hint of challenge. "Al wants you to tell us what's bothering you." "So what is it?" Elaine looks at Pacino, then at Jimmy, and finally at the audience. Her eyes narrow, and she speaks, clear and loud. "What bothers me is that no one listens to people like me. I was a teacher for 35 years. My pension barely covers my meds. And you're up here joking about politicians like it's a game. It's not a game. It's our lives." The audience explodes in applause, louder this time, almost angry. Pacino nods, his face impassive, but his eyes flickering with a spark of triumph. Jimmy stands holding the mic, looking like he's just realized what he's gotten himself into. "Elaine," he says, trying to regain control. "I hear you. But what can we do? I'm not a congressman, I'm just a host. Just," Pacino cuts in, his voice slicing through the air, "you have a platform, Jimmy. Millions watch you every night. You can give people like Elaine a voice. Or are you scared it'll hurt your ratings?" Jimmy opens his mouth, but doesn't get a chance to respond. Elaine, still standing, adds, "I'm not asking you to fix everything. But stop laughing at us. Give us a chance to be heard." The audience erupts again, and this time the applause doesn't fade. Jimmy walks back to the stage, his face tense, but a new light in his eyes, maybe understanding, maybe fear of where this is heading. Pacino sits, watching like a predator awaiting the next move. "Okay," Jimmy says, sitting back at his desk. "Elaine, thank you. You've given me something to think about." He looks at Pacino. "Happy now?" "It's just the beginning," Al replies, his smile promising that the show is far from over. The audience holds its breath. What will Jimmy do? Will he lean into this path or try to steer back to the usual format? And what else does Pacino have up his sleeve? The studio hums with anticipation, And one thing is clear. This night will go down in history. The studio of The Tonight Show crackles with tension, as if the air is charged with electricity before a storm. The audience, mostly people over 50, sits holding their breath, their eyes burning with anticipation. Spotlights cast long shadows, and the scent of coffee and makeup mingles with a faint hint of adrenaline. Al Pacino, his face stern but his eyes alive, looks at Jimmy Fallon with a challenge. Jimmy, gripping the microphone, seems like a man balancing on the edge of a cliff. One wrong step, and everything could unravel. Elaine Thompson, a retired teacher, has just thrown down a gauntlet to the system, and her words still hang in the air. Give us a chance to be heard. Jimmy exhales slowly, his fingers clutching the mic tighter than necessary. He scans the audience, seeing faces, not just spectators, but people with real stories, pain, and hopes. His usual mask of a cheerful host cracks, and for a moment, something human shines through. "All right, Al," he says, his voice quiet but firm. "You want a real conversation? You've got it." He turns to the audience. Who else? Who wants to say something we're too afraid to hear, according to Al? The audience freezes, but only for a second. Then a man in a velvet jacket, the same one who whispered to his neighbor earlier, raises his hand. Jimmy nods and the man stands. His name is Harold. He's 62, a veteran and owner of a small auto shop. "I don't want to complain," Harold begins, his voice raspy but steady. "But I'm tired of how regular people like me get ignored. My business is barely hanging on because of taxes and inflation. And all I hear on TV is politicians arguing while you hosts laugh. It's not funny to me, Jimmy. I'm scared for my family." The audience applauds, but this time the applause isn't angry. It's filled with solidarity. A woman next to Harold wipes a tear, and Elaine, still standing, nods at him, as if to say, "You're not alone." Pacino looks at Jimmy, his gaze softening, but only slightly. "There it is, Jimmy. That's the truth you don't show in your sketches." Jimmy nods, his face tense, but his eyes alight with a new fire. "I hear you, Harold. And you, Elaine." He turns to Pacino. "But tell me, Al, what can I do? I can't change taxes or laws. I'm just..." He pauses, searching for the word. "A host." Pacino smiles, but this time there's no irony in it, only warmth. "You're more than a host, Jimmy. You're a voice. You can choose who to amplify. You can give people like Elaine and Harold a platform. Don't joke about them. Talk with them." The audience erupts in applause, louder than ever. Jimmy looks at the crowd, and for the first time that night, his smile feels genuine. He sets the mic on the desk and stands. "You know what?" he says, his voice trembling with emotion. "I'm not promising I'll change the world, but I promise to listen. And, Al, you're right, I can do more." He turns to the audience. "Elaine, Harold, would you come back to the show? Not as audience members, but as guests. Tell your stories. No jokes, no sketches. Just you." Elaine covers her mouth, her eyes glistening with tears. Harold nods, his face relaxing for the first time that evening. The audience gives a standing ovation, and even the Roots join in, playing an improvised beat that sounds like triumph. Pacino stands, extending a hand to Jimmy. "This is the start," he says softly, but the cameras catch every word. Jimmy shakes his hand, and for a moment they seem not rivals but allies. "We're not done yet," Jimmy adds, and the audience laughs, this time lightly, with relief. "But, Al, you owe me for this stress." Pacino laughs, his deep, infectious laugh echoing through the studio. "Send me the bill, pal." The cameras pull back, showing the applauding crowd and the spotlights shining like stars. The show cuts to commercial, but the feeling in the studio lingers. Audience members whisper, share impressions, and many feel they've witnessed not just a TV moment, but something real. Epilogue. Echoes the next day, social media explodes. Clips of Pacino's speech and Elaine and Harold's stories rack up millions of views. People share their own tales of pensions that fall short, businesses closing, the sense of being unheard. Some criticize Pacino for chasing clout, others accuse Jimmy of pandering. But most see something different in the show, a moment when television stopped being just entertainment. Elaine and Harold return to the show a month later. They don't become stars, but their stories inspire others to speak out. Jimmy launches a new segment, Listening to America, where ordinary people share their experiences. Ratings soar, but more importantly, people in the audience and at home feel their voices matter. Pacino doesn't comment on the events, but in an interview a year later, he smiles when asked about that night. "I just wanted to remind everyone we're all human," he says, "and we can listen to each other." Jimmy Fallon's show goes on, with jokes and sketches returning, but something has shifted. Every episode now includes a moment when Jimmy pauses, looks into the camera, and says, "Tell us what's on your mind. We're listening." And people write, call, show up. Not every problem is solved, not every wound healed, but a small step is taken. And in that step lies hope that dialogue is possible, that even in a divided world, common ground can be found. The audience members who were in the studio that night never forget how the spotlights gleamed, how Pacino's voice cut through the air, how Elaine and Harold spoke for all of them. They left with a feeling that maybe tomorrow could be a little better. And that feeling, a quiet but powerful euphoria, stayed with them forever.